if I'm going to be speaking directly to people, if that's one of the purposes of this interaction through video, then I need to take a different route than when I write or when I just record my voice through audio, because this isn't about just spilling information. This is about connecting. And I feel we all need to connect. I feel like we all are connecting, but we could be connecting at a quicker and more pleasant pace with everyone in mind, with the benefit of everyone in mind. I feel like we all have a task here. We all have an individual duty, but at the same a collective duty, and that is to abolish our boundaries, come together and understand that we are of the same cloth, we are the same people, we are the same being. We need to come together and love one another more. We need to come together and understand that love for all and love for each other is possible. I see us moving towards something beautiful. I see us in something beautiful at the same time, but we're always becoming something. We're always on the way somewhere, but it's not as if when we get there, then it's over and we're done and we're content and that's it. It's a constant journey, and we got to take it together. I often stumble when I try to do this. It's a very odd situation for me because my thoughts don't often come in conversation form, in the form in which I can just speak out a long-winded explanation of something. They usually come in concepts and ideas, in flashes, in moments, maybe a jumble of words really quickly. So in order for me to convey these ideas accurately and adequately, I have to slow my thought process down. So I'm going to try something different today. I did a little bit of this before, but it never really went in the way I wanted, because I got stumped. I didn't know what to say about what I wrote down, but I wrote some things down the other night when I was in bed. And it wasn't necessarily just so I could speak about them later, but it's to just put those ideas in my head, the ideas of what actually goes on in my mind. I'm still learning how to do this. I'm still trying to get through all my forced habits of speech. I find the truth, trying to connect to the truth within me so I can speak it, rather than connect to the desire to speak within me and speak that. Like today, I spent the whole day, it was my rest day in my exercise regimen. So I did more meditating than usual. I wouldn't allow myself to get distracted. I was trying to keep myself in a higher state of consciousness. So I stayed away from my devices like my computer and my TV and my phone. And I just spent time with me. Even when I eat, I usually read or watch TV. But today I decided to just focus on my meal and try to make that a meditation process as well. So in doing this, it leaves me in a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of awareness. My mind and my ego often jump in and try to distract me and take me out of that higher state of awareness. Because when I'm in that higher state of awareness, everything is more pleasurable. So my ego will often jump in and make suggestions as to how I could experience a lot more pleasure. For an example, when I'm in a heightened state of awareness, just living is pleasurable to me. Just being, just breathing, just doing the monotonous things I have to do every day, like cook food, and those things are really pleasurable and really joyful to me. So the things that give me joy when I'm not in a heightened state of consciousness, those are just amplified. So if I were to consume some sort of art, if I were to watch like TV or watch YouTube videos or something that usually entertains me and is easy, so it's instant gratification and there's no real effort in getting the gratification, it's really pleasurable because I just sit back and I just surrender to it and I let it do its thing and I have a great response to it. So when I indulge in these ways of achieving pleasure, there is a high potential or a risk even to get trapped in them. So since I derive so much joy from watching a TV show or watching a movie or watching a YouTube video, because this is so connected in my consciousness as something pleasurable because it was my escape. It was my go-to for relief throughout my life. It helped me get to sleep at night. It helped me distract me from my issues. I wasn't often physically fit, so I never really found much joy in the movement of my body. So I would turn to TV. So now when I do it, it connects to that part of me that always felt that joy. But when I'm in a higher state of consciousness, I can see it through different levels. I can understand the art or the media or whatever I'm consuming on through different layers. So I experience it through different layers. So I have different levels of joy and pleasure. Whereas beforehand, I would only experience it on a couple levels, or maybe just even one level or layer. So they are really, like I said, those forms of entertainment or forms of distraction or forms of pleasure are only heightened when I'm in a higher state of consciousness. But if I don't distract myself and I just don't allow myself to give in to the ego's desires that are suggested to me throughout the day, then I find myself connecting more and more with my higher self. And ultimately, the higher I get, the more in tune I get with that higher self, the more those pleasures seem trivial to me, the more they seem banal or banal. I've only ever read that word. I don't know how to pronounce it. B-A-N-A-L. So, yeah. They seem that way. They seem banal. I think it's banal. They seem very banal. And I have no desire, like the ego's desire to jump into those things and delve in and indulge in those forms of entertainment. It just goes away, because the joy of just being and the joy of life and just being with myself and aligning more and more with my true self, with my higher self, with my elevated state of consciousness, that becomes far more enjoyable to me. That's like the process that I practice, and that's the process I'm aware of throughout my everyday life. But it is a balance. I do allow ego to jump in every now and then and make decisions. And I'll even allow myself certain treats, so to speak. Like if I've spent the day with a heightened state of awareness throughout my body, I'm often moving and exercising, not in really a conventional way, but more in maybe like something similar to Tai Chi, whereas I'm just letting energy move throughout my body and trying to become aware of every single muscle, every single tendon, every single thing I can control. I want to feel it. I want to be aware of it. So that takes a lot of physical energy and a lot of physical focus. So after a while, it's like my body starts to crave a break from it. And that's when my ego will jump in, my habits, my regular desires will jump in and say, you know, you deserve a break from all of the focus and attention you've been paying to yourself. So indulge, you know, even just reading a book, you know, reading something that's entertainment, something that's fiction, something that's just, you know, a story to put me at ease. That might be something that I use, but I don't often get trapped in books. It's not like I'll read for a little bit and then I'll get really attached to the idea of reading and attached to the process of reading, that all I want to do is read, whereas I can easily get attached to the TV or to my phone or to my computer and just watch videos. And a lot of the time I am watching videos that kind of educate me on some level, but it's such passive learning that I'm not really actively using my mind. I'm just listening to someone speak. So it's not really challenging me, so I'm being lulled, essentially. Like, if I did that all day long, I wouldn't progress. I wouldn't progress as much as I would if I were to challenge myself. I came to know this by myself. Like, I came to discover this by experiencing it, by elevating myself to that heightened state of consciousness where I had no desires for indulgence. I just wanted to know more and more and experience more and more. And when I came to that heightened state of consciousness, I connected more with myself and felt more inner peace, inner joy, and a heightened state of euphoria that was pretty well consistent. So I've known since those moments of first experiencing this that this practice is the way to do it. To not allow myself to give in or surrender to indulgence all the time, but rather surrender to a different force, a force that heals me and grows me, a force that allows me to grow through it. So I'm just going to start reading something that I wrote the other night, like I said, when I was in bed, when I was more aligned and in tune, and I wasn't requiring myself to speak or translate my thoughts into words, so my mind was free to roam. And even when I wrote it, I found taking the time to write out each word slowed down the process and limited my experience of it. It limited my accessibility to it. So I'm just going to read this aloud, and then maybe I'll discuss it or talk more about it. I'm going to try to experience this as I was writing it. I try to look at the world with compassion and understanding. I condemn no one. Everyone is an expression of consciousness in a particular circumstance or predicament. When we hate, despise, or dismiss, it is because on a deep level, we know we are capable of the same behaviors. And it scares us or angers us or saddens us to know that we can become that. So to prove to ourselves that we aren't capable of it, we seek it out and try to destroy it in the physical world, thinking that it will destroy the possibility of it in ourselves, or possibly prove to others that we would never commit such atrocities. We are terrified of being seen that way because we are terrified of being ostracized or being alone. So we let ourselves believe that we are separate from those who do hateful things, that we are cut from a different cloth. I wrote that because I had the desire to communicate to the world that we need to see each other as brother and sister. As family, we are one family. Like, technically, literally, we are one family. Like, where do you draw the boundaries of family? You know, how far back can your cousins go, kind of thing. Like, it's all a matter of your own opinion, right? You might consider your second cousin your family, but not consider your 10th cousin your family. But somewhere along the line, we all branched off from the same source. So we are all of the same father and mother, in a sense. I think it's imperative that we see each other that way in order to really understand love and connection fully. Because when you separate yourself from someone, when you dismiss someone or hate someone or despise someone, you're only opening yourself up to a certain amount of love and connection. And you have to hold something in your consciousness that person that you despise is negative or not part of you in any way or not connected to you in any way. So you're pushing away, you're resisting a part of yourself, because in truth, you are just a representation of the whole. You are the entire self. So every single person and every single thing is an expression of yourself. I think a common cognitive dissonance comes from the idea that we think that if someone is doing something that we despise or we don't approve of, then we must shut them out and consider them different from us. We feel like we need to demonstrate to others that we are not like the people we despise. We are not like the people that do things that we disapprove of. We don't need to separate entirely from other people that do things we disapprove of in order to not do those things ourselves. It's as if everyone has this fear of the innate possibility that if we accept others into our lives that do things we disapprove of, then it's possible that we could do those things as well. So a way of denying that, a way of denying the possibility of us doing those things as well, is saying that we have no affiliation with anyone that is capable of such a thing, and we believe ourselves to be incapable of it. The point is that every human, every expression of consciousness in any way, harbors at its core the same capacity to commit anything. We all harbor the capacity to commit good or bad things, loving or hateful things. I know this. I came to realize this because I've seen it in myself. I felt alienated a lot of my life. I felt different, and I felt alone a lot of my life. So there were many times where I wanted people to hurt. It wasn't as if I was always actually planning to hurt someone or wanting to hurt someone, but there was a point, I would get to low points in my life where if people in my life that I disagreed with on some level went through something hard, I wouldn't feel empathy or sympathy for them. Sometimes I would even feel joy that they experienced it. There had been times where I hated people so much that I actually wished harm on them. There had been times where negative things would happen to the people who I had believed had wronged me in some way, and I would be elated. I can actually remember a time when I was roughly maybe 22 years old, and a former friend of mine had gotten caught by the police for doing something illegal. And I was overjoyed, as I thought he was actually going to spend time in prison. And that actually, it made me feel as if I had won, as if karma had played its role, and that person was getting what they deserve. And I think the reason at my core why I felt that way is because I wanted that person to be shown that they were wrong. I wanted them to realize and wake up to the idea that they were doing something they shouldn't be doing and they should change. That was my desire, to have them realize that they were wrong. And this wasn't necessarily my primary desire, but it would have been nice icing on the cake if they had come to me and said, "You were right all along, I'm sorry I wronged you." I think everybody has that desire at some point in their life where they feel they've been wronged by someone, and they would just love for that person to come to them and say, "You were right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have did that to you, I was in the wrong." It just confirms and encourages and supports the idea of ourselves being right or good. And that's always a good feeling, to be confirmed or assured that you're right or good. But it doesn't have to come at the expense of another the way I wished it. We as a society encourage and have been conditioned to have an attitude of competition. And when I speak about competition, I'm not suggesting we abolish all competition. There is such thing as healthy competition. If you want to grow in some skill, if you want to progress in some way, then putting yourself up against someone who is at a higher level in that skill or ability than you is a good way to grow yourself. But what I mean about our society's view on competition is that there are those whom we need to abolish, to vanquish. We as a society have this vanquish our enemies kind of attitude. We need to seek out that which is wrong and we need to destroy it. But I would allude to some examples such as the war on drugs, or the war on crime, or the war on terrorism. That kind of mentality where we seek out and try to destroy it doesn't get rid of it. If anything, you're feeding more energy to it for it to come back even harder the next time. The answer is unconditional love to everything and everyone. Even though that may seem preposterous to think that we should take the evil people in our lives in the world, we should take the bad people in our lives and in the world and love them. But that's something I realized that needs to be done, because when I had a potential for evil in myself, it was because I lacked love. I lacked love from others, and I lacked self-love. And I might have actually been getting love from others. People actually probably might have felt love for me and tried to show it, but I would not let myself receive it because I didn't think I deserved it, or I didn't know how to receive it. The idea of competition is also based on something that's a little bit broader, and that is the idea of scarcity, which is the idea that there isn't enough to go around. And that's why things like hierarchies exist. And they can be functional when we actually are in a situation where scarcity exists. And there's a scarcity of resources that everybody needs. So we need to determine how to distribute it through some sort of hierarchical system as fairly as we possibly can. But when we are under the impression that we could be at the bottom, then we all strive to reach for the top. If we are under the impression that we could be in a place where we have nothing and we will perish if we don't get what we need, Of course, that innate fear of perishing will drive us and encourage us and motivate us to make our way to the top at the expense of someone else. So we all have this idea that if we climb on one another and push each other down, then we can get to the top and escape. But that, like I said, that whole mentality is based on the idea of scarcity. And a lot of people do still believe that we are in a state of scarcity because we've been conditioned our whole lives to believe that. Everywhere we look, everything we see, in every way, shape, or form, confirms or assures or affirms the idea that we are in a state of scarcity, of not having enough to go around. So we have to develop a system to decide who gets what when. We base this system on rules that some of us come to agree to. And the idea inherently behind that is not a bad idea. It's just that over time, it can tend to become corrupt. That idea of scarcity, like I said, a lot of people do believe that that idea is actually based on truth. But in reality, it isn't. We, in our current state, we, with our potential knowledge and understanding, we can harness the ability and put into action provisions for all. We can find ways to provide for everyone. There isn't actually a shortage. We have the potential to provide food and clothing and shelter to everyone on the planet with ease. It requires sacrifice in each and every individual. It requires a mentality of working for the whole and not just for the sole unit. So let's get to it.